G'day guys, today's guest is a co-founder of Like Family, a social enterprise specialising in companionship and social supports for older Australians and people living with a disability who may be experiencing social isolation or loneliness. He started the organisation with his wife Jenna after they experienced firsthand the struggles in the aged and disability sectors. They both come from corporate backgrounds and left to pursue their goal to make a difference in people's lives. Having been through it, they are passionate about helping people find the best solutions to their home care needs. In 2018, Like Family won StartCon's Best Startup for Social Good, and in 2019, they were named Australia's fourth fast-growing tech startup. So with that, I would like to welcome today Mathieu Bertrand. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Shaun. Thanks for having me.
Hey man, Matt, it's good to see you again. You and I, we work together. This is how we know each other, and just a bit of context for our audience. But we've known each other for a few years now. But I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit about your backstory. Your origin, where you come from, and essentially how you come to be the man you are today, mate. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Les. And just before we started recording, it's funny because I was going to say, Shaun, that I know Les more as a competitive basketball player than a workmate, because we had some good basketball games.
How would they usually turn out?
I usually steal the ball from him quite often, and I'm kidding. But yeah, thanks for having me, guys. In terms of my backstory, I grew up with really loving parents. I'm an only child. Grew up in a small ski village, 1 hour north of Montreal, Canada. The place I grew up in and the parents I had very supportive parents. The village was a very small community where most people knew each other. And also, I think a lot of people don't know this about me when they hear my accent, but I didn't need to speak English until I was at university. So pretty much my whole upbringing was French. It's for the exception that we have mandatory 2 hours of English classes a week. So that's 2 1-hour classes in high school. So that's kind of just to give you some context of where I grew up. Both my parents, and I know I'm not supposed to say because it's anonymous. But my parents were both AA sponsors, and they're okay for me to say this because they've been very open about it. But my parents were leaders within the AA movements. They both stopped. I was born in 1987, so both my parents stopped drinking 3 years before I was born. And so growing up, they would bring me along to AA meetings, and they would travel quite a lot. So they would go all the way down to Florida. So I'd be sitting there in the corner as a kid, just watching these meetings take place. And I think I learned a lot from just attending those meetings as a kid. As a kid, I didn't really understand the power of alcohol and the impact it can have on people's lives. But that was a real kind of eye opener. And, the older I get, the more I reflect back on those younger years of spending, and as an only child as well, I was either reading a book or listening to other adults talk about their problems. So that was kind of a deep experience when I think about it. The other thing as well that was impactful in my childhood was that my dad was 20 years older than my mom. So when my mom had me, she was 28 and my dad was 20 years older, so 48. So growing up through school, compared to all of my classmates, I always had more than that. So subconsciously, I think I always knew to be grateful for my dad. And this sounds really weird, but back in my head, I always knew that I need to cherish every moment with my dad because he was in his 60s, when I was in high school already. So that I think matured me as well. And before my mom and I, my dad had a previous marriage where he had 2 other children. So I have a half brother and a half sister. And at 8 years old, and we were very close with my half brother and my half sister. We still had a good relationship with them, and we have video footage of back in the early, like I found a video that was filmed in 1990 the other day on a huge video recorder. Back then, you guys probably have similar footage, because back in the day that was the thing, right? That was the technology, and it's like me as a 3-year-old and my half sister there holding me and hugging me, and like it was pretty amazing to watch. And when I was 8, she was killed by a drunk driver. So that was a huge, I guess, traumatic event for our family, because it also made the front page of the Montreal newspaper. So yeah, like from a very young age, that there's a lot of maturing to do on my behalf, and kind of understanding life and death and all these things that for an 8-year-old to understand is just really hard. My dad's sister also moved to the States when she was a young adult, so she started a family in Boston. So I have cousins in Boston area, and I remember being about 10 or 11 years old and driving down to see them, every year. And it was always we always had a great time when we went down to see them. And there was a year around 2000, 2001, where I went down there to see my cousins, and they gave me a New England Patriots jersey, because that's the area they live in. And I was like, oh, this is such a cool jersey. And I became, at like 10 or 11 years old, a huge American football fan because of that. And I went back to Montreal, Canada with that jersey, and I would wear it all the time. And I started watching the Patriots on TV. And at the time, the quarterback was Drew Bledsoe, and I remember watching this game, and Drew Bledsoe is scrambling to the sideline, and he gets nailed by a Buffalo Bills linebacker, gets knocked out of bounds, and then the Patriots send in this guy no one knew about. His name is Tom Brady, and I remember being like, 12 or 11 or 12, I can't remember exactly, like watching this guy Tom Brady go on the field, and I swear to God, like I always tell people this, like Tom Brady, I became a fan of him from day one, because he just jumped into the game. And then since that time, like now he's known as one of the greatest professional athletes. I still remember exactly that moment Tom Brady jumped on the field. And since then, that was kind of like, it's a weird kind of memory to remember, but for me, it was a turning point, because I already had like a role model that I was looking up to. And it sounds really cheesy, but sports played a big impact in my life in high school. Well, unfortunately, because I grew up in a ski village, there was no football. It was hockey or basketball or skiing. So in a high school, the ski program I was part of was to produce some of the best skiers in Canada. So for me, like having a house on the ski mountain, skiing is kind of like second nature for me. And if it's not winter, then you're playing basketball or soccer. But basketball became my passion. Our high school didn't have a football team, so in my senior year of high school, I petitioned for the high school to have a football team. So I did a petition, and the high school ended up getting a football team, but 3 years after I graduated. So I'm kind of like pretty happy that I was able to initiate that for my region. And during high school, like it was really interesting, because I never had grandparents. After the passing of my sister at 8, life was good up until about 18 or 19, because I lost a few family members again, to various reasons, but never really had grandparents. I don't know. I always admire people who have grandparents. Like my wife has really wonderful family. my mom used to bring me. So I did have a grandma, but she was always kind of like, she didn't last very long. So my memories of her aunt, there isn't much of it. She was also in a, I don't like to use the word vegetable state, but like it was very hard to communicate with her. She was present, she was there. I know she was there in spirit, but every time we'd go and visit, it was we'd be talking to her and hoping she would hear us and stuff like that. Then I wanted to basically, during high school, I was like, man, I don't want to stay in this small village, and I want to learn English. I always had ambitions of, I didn't really have a career path. I didn't have a career goal. At this point, football was, and like, this sounds really funny because a kid, a Canadian kid, who has never played football before, wants to play professional football was my goal. So it was kind of a weird dream. But what I did is I started looking for universities that had a football team, and I was like, you know what? I also want to open my possibilities to be able to travel the world. So I need to get better at English. So I was like, okay, so my two criterias for university are a football team and an English university. So I found a place and went there, and I was a walk-on. I made the team, and I learned a lot. I trained a lot, both my English skills as well as my physical ability. I was a skinny kid growing up. So putting on weight was really difficult, real ectomorph. And yeah, made the football team there, and that was an amazing experience. Again, I studied political science and human relations, and the only reason I decided on those degrees is because, again, I was interested in politics and traveling, but again, I think that my mind was really set on just playing sports. I was just so passionate about it, and so yeah, university. Didn't make it pro. That didn't happen. But what was cool about this experience, football at university, is it brought me to Europe, and I got to play in Europe, and I got to meet my wife in Europe, and my wife is Australian, from Sydney. And we met in Europe. I was playing for a team called the Brussels Bulls. It was an amazing experience. They gave me a car and an allowance, and I got to drive around Europe with my new girlfriend. So exciting, lots of freedom. Meanwhile, my parents are back in Canada. And it's just like amazing, you're 21 years old, you're 21 years old, 22, and just living in Europe. It's just a great lifestyle. And then, after I graduated, after I finished playing football in Europe, I was like, well, I met this great girl and she lives in Australia, and it sounds like a wonderful place there. So I'm going to pack my bags and go to Australia. And there is when I applied for jobs. I was like, hey, I want to stay here. This country's great. I like this girl. I need to find myself a job. It's really important to find a job for me because I wanted to show that I was capable of, building a career and staying. So that's when I got my first job in Australia with Commonwealth Bank, or Colonial First State. And superannuation is not an international thing. So I had no idea about ASX or superannuation or how pensions work in Australia. So again, there was a huge learning curve there. Learning about all the and like just learning about the technical components of the financial system in Australia, but also learning about the terminologies, and the language and the slang that Australians use. Like I remember, my first role was investor services, right? So I'd be talking to pensioners around Australia, and some of them from Northern Territory or WA with strong accents. And I'm this French Canadian kid whose English is getting better. But wow, that was a real challenge. But I had nothing else. For me, it was my girlfriend at the time and work. So I just put in the hours and worked. And within a year, I was promoted to advisor services, then dealing with financial advisors. And then within, I think, 6 to 7 months, I was promoted to the operations side of the customer service, then real-time management. And then my last role was workforce management. So that was the scheduling and forecasting of about, I think we had around 100 FTEs. So that was a really cool experience, lots of responsibilities. So I'm really proud that within 5 years, I went from, this kind of foreign French Canadian to managing, the entire customer operations, and they're managing their schedules. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it reminded me a lot of my experience with football, going in with no experience and no idea what to do, and finding a way to make it work, playing at a high level. So after CBA, this is where, sorry for the language, but shit hit the fan again for me in terms of family drama. So in 2012, my dad gave me a call. So my parents separated, first of all. And my dad gave me a call, and he was like, "Hey, we found a spot on my left lung." So that was the first time we learned lung cancer. At this point, remember that my dad was a lot older than my mom. So at this point, he was 71. And actually, after that call, a few months later, he suffered from stroke. And this is all in Canada. I'm still in Australia, so it's a bit it's very stressful. But luckily, my mom, even though they were separated, my mom was still there for him. She was still helping him out, and he started doing chemotherapy. And in a weird way, because of his health getting worse, my mom actually, ended up. My parents ended up coming back together in 2012 during that year. And it was kind of a beautiful relationship, because they had been married for 20 plus years, and to see that my mom was still there for him was really nice. So during that year that she was looking after him, she developed a brain virus called encephalitis, herpes encephalitis to be precise, and that's basically we all have herpes is a bacteria that we have in our bodies. It doesn't develop for all of us, but it exists, right, in our bodies. So what happens with her is, sometimes herpes develops in the form of a cold sore around the mouth, or other places on your body. For her, it's very unlucky. It develops in her brain. And so what that does is the brain creates inflammation to a point where the brain expands, and starts running out of room. And what happens at that point is starts killing brain cells. So what happened is she woke up one morning, and my dad, it was a morning, she woke up out of bed, and she's talking to my dad. My dad's kind of waking up. And I only know this because that's what my dad told me at the time. And my dad was looking at her "You're not making any sense." Her name is Hélène. "Hélène, you're not making any sense." She talks just like I'm talking to you. But imagine if the words coming out of my mouth were alien, gibberish, they don't make sense. But to me, they make sense. So when she was talking, everything came to her sounded really clear. But to the person listening, it makes no sense at all. So there's something really weird about that. So my dad brought her to the hospital straight away. And within I think it was 24 to 48 hours, she went into a coma. She went under, and then that's when I got the call from Canada. And I was still working for CBA at the time. And I couldn't believe this has just happened. If you're an only child, for anyone out there who's an only child, I don't know, if you grew up with good parents, they were my best friends. I was really close to them. And, I had just spoken to them the week prior, and everything was going well. So to learn that my mom was now in a coma, and my dad is doing chemotherapy in the same hospital, Man, that was tough to deal with. So I spoke to my manager at CBA at the time, and what a great guy. He helped me work from Canada so I could go look after them. So I told my long-term girlfriend at the time, again, we weren't engaged at this point. I said, look, I'm going to go back to Canada to spend some time with my parents and see what they need and how I can take care of them, and we'll figure out from there. So I just took the next flight and back, and it was middle of winter, so we were extremely isolated. Like, you know, where I'm from, like, there's a lot of snow. It's dark most of the time. There's a lot of snow, and it's very isolating if you're in a house. And reality hit me hard because, you know, I was 26 now, or 25, and being, you know, 20 to 25 years old, like you're enjoying life, you're living it to the fullest, you're having fun. It just hit me now. I'm no longer this, like, I'm a responsible person now. I have 2 dependents that I need to look after. It really hit hard. And when my mom woke up from her coma, the biggest uncertainty was, so when I got back, she had just gotten out of her coma. And the biggest thing, no one knew, none of the neurologists, the nurses, no one knew how much she would, like, what her capabilities would be when she would wake up. And so they all ran, this is a story they told me, they all ran around her bed, you know, and they were kind of like all staring at her, waiting to see what the first words would be out of her mouth, if she would recognize people. And unfortunately, she had lost all everything. She had lost all her communicative abilities. She couldn't talk, she couldn't walk, she couldn't eat. And again, it reminded me of my grandma that I referred to earlier. It's like, shit, that's, you know, my mom, who was the rock of the family. She organized all the family events. She was the one, literally, like, you know, a real mother. Like, you know, a month before that, she was, you know, emailing me from Canada going, Matt, have you done your tax return? Have you, you know, like a real, like, you know, what moms do. And here she is now unable to do anything. It was extremely sad and traumatic. And the neurologist, I always remember this, because as a loved one, as a family member, you want the best for your family. And I remember, you know, telling the neurologist, like, gosh, she's got to stay in this hospital. She's got to have the best care. And he said, you know what, the best thing for her to do is actually to go back home, where she's surrounded by her family and friends. She's stimulated, exposed to her environment. The reason he said that, was because your brain is going to find ways of preparing itself. Your brain is going to find ways to connect the dots. And there's parts of the brain that are damaged for your mom, but the brain will find connectivity pathways that to go around those broken areas. And I had no idea about this stuff. Like, I was like, are you crazy? No, like, she can't do anything. So look, trusted him, went back home. So spent 6 months training my mom, playing, you know, and this is progressive. Like, if you're a personal trainer and allied health professional, you know, you're talking very slow progressive development, where my mom went from, like, basic stuff, like just lifting her arm and getting her to move her fingers, to teaching her how to just walk again, like basic stuff. And she's 54 at this point. You know, at the end of the 6 months, we were playing Wii. So I had bought a Nintendo Wii. You know, we're finding every possible way of stimulating her. Her favorite albums were Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley. So anytime we put that on, she would literally be dancing. You could see her body moving, like anything to get her moving, anything, smallest things to stimulate her brain. I just remember what the neurologist said. I was like, all right, we got to maximize that. We got to do stimulation. So what can we do? And friends, we invited family and friends to visit her all the time. And believe it or not, like, we started seeing some results, and her brain started repairing itself. And I'm going to fast forward to today. She's back living independently. So it's truly amazing recovery. But, you know, at that time, we didn't know how much she was going to recover. So now, like, we were seeing progress. Called my wife, my girlfriend at the time, was now my wife, said, hey, we've got two options here. We can either move to Canada or we move my parents to Australia. I still have my job at CBA. My wife has a great job as well. Like, what do we do? If you come to Canada, you have to learn French, because in Quebec, you can't find a job if you don't know how to speak French. So that was the deal breaker. Like, all right, we're going to Australia. But also, before moving to Australia, my dad in Canada, his last year that he spent in Canada, suffered, because of his immune system is so weak, he suffered 11 pneumonias that year in 2013. So I was like, I know pneumonia is caused by an infection of the lungs, but surely having beautiful beaches and palm trees and nice weather more often is going to help. And surely enough, when we tested that, and his the first year, when he moved to Australia that year, he only had 2 pneumonias. So I think that made a difference. So we moved my parents here. That is not an expensive process. So again, if you're a young person working, like, imagine this, I'm a young person working in banking. I learned about savings and money and financial management. And so I had saved at this point around 30 to 40K. And I had superannuation. I was like, oh my God, I even have like retirement savings. It's amazing. But all of that money, like, except for superannuation, but all of my savings that I had was going to go to my parents, because, like, that's just a sacrifice I have to make. This is, I love my parents more than anything. They're financially, we're not rich to the point where my parents, they needed my help. And so, they weren't eligible for government funding here. They came in on an H-parent visa. We moved a bunch of stuff, like the proper, a removal list, international removal list, to bring all of their stuff over to Australia. And living here, I got them an apartment in Lane Cove. And this is where we really got to experience, because of the age gap for my parents, we got to experience the disability sector for my mom and the aged care sector for my dad. And I had to do a lot of research and planning of personal care workers to come in and out and help my parents, or to help my mom, like, with showering. And we still needed allied health professionals, and we needed support workers to help my parents with grocery shopping. I would be working at CBA, and I would get calls in the middle of the day, and my parents would go out for walks. My dad couldn't walk at this point. He was on a mobility scooter, and he tormented Lane Cove Plaza with his mobility scooter. All the business owners, whenever I used to go there with my parents, the business owners would go, they'd go, oh, is that your dad? It's like, yeah, that's my dad. He's like, oh my God, he goes so fast on his mobility scooter. It was like, he just, he's a bit of a rebel. But they would literally get lost. So I would be working at CBA and get phone calls, and my parents would be like, we don't know how to get home. I'm like, what? You don't know how to, what? Oh my God. So that was completely stressful. One time I had to leave CBA during my lunch break, get a go-get, so from the city, and drive to Lane Cove to check on them, because they weren't responding to their phones, and I knew that they were lost because they had told me that. And then their phone died because they didn't remember to charge it. And there were times as well where I would go to their house and they had no food at all. And I said, where's all your food? And they're like, oh, we're too tired to go and get food. I'm like, wow, okay. There's all these little basic everyday things that were really stressful, because they would sacrifice their basic needs sometimes, because they just couldn't, because of their disability, they just couldn't get out. And I'm so grateful. We have a friend, and her name is Destiny. At the time, I think she was working part-time, and she offered to help my parents. My dad used to get so angry whenever I suggested to get a personal worker or support worker, but he was okay with Destiny because she was they got along really well. And so that's when we realized that actually for my parents, the biggest problem isn't personal care or medical support. The biggest problem for my parents and for us as a family is for them to engage in the community and maintain their dignity and be with people they get along with. And finding an affordable model to do that. And we learn more and more that in the disability and care industry, there's not enough support workers. So where we wanted to focus on is at the top of the funnel. Let's get more people involved in this industry. Let's get more people helping other people with disabilities and people who are elderly. And where the way we summarize this is essentially there's people living in isolation and loneliness. They're two separate things, loneliness and social isolation, but they're in the impact they have on mental health are very similar. So how do we solve that problem, and how do we solve getting more people into helping community members, local community members? And so that's how we started our business. And you know, CBA was great to me, but we transitioned, we created the business model while I was working at CBA, and we took a leap and went for it. And that's where we are today. 5 years in, my family's going strong. It's looking at expanding nationally. And again, I'm going to refer back to my football experience and to my experience at CBA, where I basically started something knowing nothing. I knew nothing about disability. I knew nothing about aged care. I knew nothing about being a primary care. Just learned it from scratch and become a master of it. And I think that's kind of been my journey in life. Sorry, that went on for a bit long.
Oh man.
No, man.
But you did say in the brief to be detailed, so
I you know, we love when our guests are detailed, and man, what a story! Like, you know, a lot of that I didn't actually know, and you know, like you said, how you knew me in terms of like the whole basketball thing, like, you know, we'll just leave it at that particular part wasn't actually true, but you know, we'll leave the I guess so the audience can find out or read between the lines there. But yeah, man, I mean, that really is a nice way to paint your journey, like the whole football thing. Like, I know that you know, you also played American football here in Sydney for quite a bit, and you were really good. Like, whatever you did, you were really good at. And it's a really nice way for you to frame it in terms of, you know, just jumping into the deep and not really knowing, but just getting your hands dirty and putting in the time and doing the work. And I'm just wondering, man, like, where do you think that actually came from for yourself? Like, where do you think that that sort of approach to life and how you just essentially dive in, where did that come from for you, do you think?
Yeah, it's a deep question. You know, I spent a lot of time reading as a growing up, and the first book. So first of all, I think my parents. I'll say my parents, because, you know, when I look back and I think about them being leaders within the AA movement, yeah, they were influential within the AA movement. They were in there, like they've been sober, you know, since they're quite young. So they've been years. I remember my dad getting 30 years sober. Like and every time I'd watch my parents, they were helping, mentoring, coaching other people, and helping them through really difficult moments in their lives. You know, for some of us, like, we don't understand addictions and alcoholism, but it's, for other people, it's a big problem, and it affects mental health. And I'm watching my parents do that, watching them, you know, I think like they inspired me because they went from they flipped their lifestyles. If I told you the stories of them before they you know, when they were drinking, they basically took that huge leap, right? They went from completely flipped their life. So they from a young age, I was like, okay, well, it is possible to start from scratch. And why not? Life is short, and you've got to try new things. I think, like, yeah, like learning has been one of my biggest passions. I love learning. I'm always reading podcasts, and the first book, and that comes from my parents again, because the first book I ever read, that was an English book. I was about 15 or 16 years old, and my mom gave me a book called How to Influence People and Make Friends by Dale Carnegie. Like, that is not a book you give to a 15-year-old to learn English. But that's literally what I read. And then I got really into self-motivation books. We all have our opinions about them, but they inspired me. Like, at a young age, I didn't really know much better. So I read a bunch of Dale Carnegie stuff, a bunch of Vince Lombardi stuff. People don't know Vince Lombardi. He's a very famous American football coach. And he was an amazing leader, and he's got great quotes, things like that. So yeah, I was inspired by that kind of stuff. And I guess, like, also, I think part of me, and I don't know where that comes from, but it's like, I'm not scared of trying something new and starting from nothing, because also, like, I grew up like, so middle class, like, not poor, not rich. But my parents, like, we did run into financial difficulty when I finished high school, for a few reasons. But at that point, if I wanted to play football and go to university, I had to work. I was washing dishes at the end of high school, so I could save money. I knew that I had to pay for my own rent, because the university over there in Canada is so far from where I live. You can't live with your parents. You have to, like, literally find an apartment near the university. And so, it's just getting that work habit. And I had nothing. Like, I was living off of $20 a week. Sometimes I was buying, literally, I'd go to the grocery stores and cans of tuna, pasta. And back in Canada, you can sell your empty bottles of beers, because we're in college, right? Like, I'm not going to hide it. Like, you're drinking a few beers, you can sell your beers back at the grocery store and make money off of it. So you get 10 cents a bottle. And with that money, I would then buy cans of supplies so I was living off of that for 2 years. I had a roommate at the time, and we were both in the same boat as well. So I think it's just like, I don't need much to live. And I think that I think a lot of people, I don't know, like, we can go deep into this, but that whole concept of materialism and needing more, you don't actually need that much to be happy. And that's what I think I got from that. And so for me, starting from scratch, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I can still survive. I can still find the roof over my head. I can still be happy, because happiness doesn't come from money and material. Happiness comes from the people you know and the people you have around you. That's my philosophy. So yeah,
that's really
totally, man.
interesting.
And like, just want to follow up, like, the last thing, because, like, I know that you spoke about this a few times, and you brought it up, and you said the word trauma a few times within your story. And one of the things I picked up on is the situation you explained to us when you were 8 years old, and your sister was tragically killed, and you said that you had to grow up fast, essentially, because there were things that obviously an 8-year-old needn't necessarily think about at that point in time of their lives, right? But perhaps that is something as well that was a contributor to your growing up quicker, your maturation process. And like I said, we speak about traumatic experience quite a bit on the show, because it seems to be one of those things that becomes like a catalyst for moving us in a certain direction in life, right? So do you think that particular process or that particular situation and all the other traumatic experiences that you experienced were factors in that?
Yeah, because it's been on my mind since forever. I've always, every day I wake up, I'm reminded that it happens. There's that moment where we're all sitting in a living room and everyone's crying. And I never used only recently I was like, I don't usually use the word traumatic. I think that, but the more I grow up and the more I reflect on my life, I think that I should realize that, that is a traumatic event. I think, I've always avoided calling it a traumatic event because I think some people have gone through worse than I have. But I need to understand that those are important moments of my life because I'm thinking about them every day, and just having that self-awareness that those are the possibility that have impacted my personality the rest of my life is you've got to come to that realization and be aware of it instead of swallowing it up and trying to ignore it or putting why they often say if you have a traumatic experience you can often forget that moment, a horrific accident, for example. But a moment like this, I think I should just reflect it and think of it differently. It's a moment that's happened and it's made me stronger. Just got to change the way I think about that moment. And the other moments, that I've got to also be more open with myself about is, so the trip that I made back to Canada to look after my parents, right? That's 2012. My mom had a brother, my uncle, who I was close with as well, and he suffered all his life with mental health problems, specifically schizophrenia, and he loved me a lot. And when I went back, not only was I already extremely sad about my mom and dad, but my uncle committed suicide, and I had to be the one who went to his apartment and clear it out. And there was photos of me everywhere, and there's still, sorry for the explicit imagery, but there's still the rope hanging from that he used to commit suicide. So that's a traumatic event. I've got to be, and I'm comfortable sharing that with people because it's again, it's not something I want to keep inside of me, and it feels good to talk about it. It feels really good to talk about it. And it doesn't feel isolating. It doesn't feel lonely. And I think that for people who have experienced events like that as well, it might make them feel good to hear that someone else has gone through something similar. So, because whenever I hear someone talk about something I relate to, I always find it really helpful. So.
No, most definitely. I think, we all know people that have suppressed things for a very long time, and then it doesn't turn out so well for them. It manifests in some other area of their life in something that doesn't turn out so great, right? And you've had a lot of these events, it sounds like, to be frank, right? Where you've had to deal with some really confronting things. And from talking to you just now and meeting you just now, because it's the first time we've met here, right? You've actually got this energy about you, Matt, this very positive energy about you. You seem like a very happy person to me, right? And then we're having this conversation, and at different points in it, I hear about these really significant traumatic events that you've had, right? And I think if you had just spoken about those moments in your life, or someone had learned that those were the experience that you've had throughout your life, right? So with your sister, with your parents, with your uncle now, right? So it would be really easy for people to think, wow, this guy must be really depressed, really, really depressed, right? And you'd have every reason to be in people's eyes, I think, right? But the opposite is true, right? Not just, I don't know you, but I can just tell, right? It's a feeling that I have. And I think that is really a testament to your approach and what you just said, which is you're talking about it, right? You are recognizing it for what it is, but then you're choosing to do something in all of these situations that's really positive. You're making these choices to push forward, and you keep tackling things you don't know anything about, like over and over and over again. And it feels to me like that might be one of the keys to why you have this attitude. Could you talk to me more about that? And if, my observation you feel is true or not?
Yeah, it's spot on. I think I always, my wife says that a lot, like similar to what you just described. And it's really hard to pinpoint, exactly why I have that attitude, because, when we look, my wife and I have had these discussions before, and we look back, and if we look at my family on both sides of my mom and my dad, like, unfortunately, there's a lot of, depression, mental health, and alcoholism involved. So why did I come out with a different attitude? I think I've got to say again, going back to the influence my parents had, has been really big. But I always look. One of the things. So talk about trying new things, because I know, Leslie, you've done that as well, and with this podcast and your new journey. When shit hit the fan in 2012, I don't know what, and so I didn't know what burnout was. I didn't know what depression was, because until you experience it, you don't really know what it is. But looking back, I know that in July 2017 I burnt out, and that was for work reasons, okay, because of this business. But I don't want to talk about that moment. But I'm just saying, like, I recognize now that was a burnout, because there's certain symptoms that I'm like, that is not normal. Why am I being so emotional during those moments? Things like that. Depression is different, and that 2012, seeing my parents in the state they were in, and my uncle committed suicide, and my mom's uncle passing away as well. I definitely had to do something. I had to find a way to just stay, mentally good, because being self-aware and knowing my family history, I'm very vulnerable to depression or addiction. So I've got to be really careful. So, and I don't know it's hard for me, Shaun, to say why I have that mindset. I don't again, I go back to growing up and my mom giving me, self-help books and self-motivation books. But one thing I did do is, and this sounds corny and cheesy, but I guess I'm a bit addicted to exercise. I have to exercise every day. I have to do it. And I actually I started meditation in 2012. I started also doing a practice called Ashtanga, and I'm a big fan of Ashtanga yoga. And I did that in Sydney when I moved my parents here. That was the first time that I was doing that every morning, 5 a.m. And the practice, when you start, is about half an hour. It can go up to an hour and a half as you gain your abilities, and you become better at it. It's a very, very difficult practice. It's the same sequence over and over. So if you're someone who doesn't like repetition and routine, it's not for you. It's also very physically demanding because it requires a lot of. So you'd finish those sessions with meditation, vinyasa, and sorry, not a vinyasa. It slips my mind now. I'm having. You finish the practice in a meditative state. Very calm meditative state. The Ashtanga was created for in India for young teenagers who were very hyperactive. They would make them do this practice, and at the end of it, they would be calm and relaxed and focused. And that's what I did at that time, because the stress levels were extremely high, and I needed to find something to balance it out. Actually, really funny. And well, I don't know if it's funny. Sorry, but I mean, it kind of is. Actually, it is funny. It is funny because involuntarily, I was doing Ashtanga in the morning. I was training at lunch. I was training in the afternoon. I was like literally training 2 days a day, 3 times a day, while working at CBA and looking after my parents. It was nuts. Like again, like I think that I became addicted to it, and I think Leslie knows this. But what ended up happening is my team leader at CBA helped me with this like men's health magazine application, and so you have to submit like a profile. They were looking for like, you know, Australia's men's health magazine man of the year. And I got picked in the top 12 out of thousands of applications based on a photo and a profile. And then I was invited to do this competition, and amongst the finalists in Pearl Beach, and I made the top 6. And from there, I was named Australia's 2013 Men's Health Magazine Fittest Man in Australia. So I had won a fitness challenge that Men's Health Magazine had put on. So I was like, wow. So, you know, looking back, I guess I filtered my energy in a different way. I could have chosen the bottle, you know, I could have chosen drugs. I could have chosen, you know, anything else, but I chose that channel to. And yeah, it's, you know, it's not good to over-exercise, but I guess for anyone, like it could have been painting, it could have been writing, it could have been anything, right? You decide, you have control over where you source your energy. And the Men's Health magazine actually led me to then like I started doing photo shoots for Aussie Bum and for like magazines and clothing brands. And I was like, wow, okay, this is kind of cool. I never even pictured myself doing modeling. I thought that was so lame. On my LinkedIn profile, I referred to my moment, my Zoolander moment. But it just, you know, like that opened up a new path for me, even though I didn't pursue it because of other priorities. But it was kind of a cool and funny experience that I went from like this hyper depressing and stressful stage of my life to being an underwear model for Aussie Bum. Like I remember one of the first days I arrived in Australia, and we're with my wife is showing me around Sydney, and I'm sitting in the car with her, and there's a bus in front of us, and there's this Aussie Bum ad. I'm like, because Aussie Bum is so Australian, and I remember going like, what is that? And she was telling me about the whole Aussie Bum thing, and like I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And 5 years later, I'm one of them. I'm like, what the hell? This is so weird. How did this happen? Yeah, so I hope that answered your question.
Look, so much goes into that. Like, yeah, and I do remember that part. We did make sure to make fun of you quite a bit about that whole experience, but you know, just because we were jealous of the incredible rig you had, and it's probably still have, mate. But you know, yeah, funny, very funny moment. But yeah, look, it does paint a really nice picture for us, and it says a few things in my mind. Like firstly, I think that you've referred back to your parents a few times, right? And I really feel that this is like they've given you a really strong foundation. You know, like the little things that they did that you know just briefly explained to us. Getting sober before you were born, you know, bringing you to these AA meetings and allowing you to, you know, witness this as a child, which would have been a very different thing to have witnessed at a young age. And then, you know, like you said, being handed a Dale Carnegie book, like that sort of thing, that there's quite a bit of intention behind that action. Do you know what I mean? And I believe that your mum was quite aware of what she was doing as she, you know, was handing you those types of books to read at such a young age, and it really did set you up for you know, becoming the man you are today. And then you said things about, you know, focus, right, and where we have the choice to point our focus, right? And yeah, like when I knew you back in the day when we worked together, you were a very physically active man, and you still are by the sounds of things, right? And like you said, you chose where you wanted to place your focus, and then ultimately became, a medium for you to simply express yourself and allow, and I love the way that you put it, whether it be, any sort of form of art, you basically use that as your expressive outlet and your form of personal art expression, which, like you said, opened up some very unexpected doors. But yeah, it's amazing way to just paint the picture for everyone. So yeah, thank you for bringing us along that journey. What I want to sort of ask you about now and sort of dig a bit deeper down is like family. I'd love for you to talk to the audience a little bit more about, the model of the business, what it's all about. And, you've given us a little bit about how it came to be. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about what you guys do and what it's all about, man.
Yeah, so the business is the business model is very simple. We're looking for people in the community who are looking for opportunities to help someone else that lives locally. So that could be you and Shaun, for example, who, if you've got an hour or two a week that you think you could be a big brother for a young man with autism, for example, who needs guidance in life or mentoring or sort of like just that kind of big brother. That's really what we're all about. And what we do is we try to connect the people, with people who are needing that guidance because they might be disadvantaged because of specific or particular abilities that they have. Not disabilities, but abilities. Like we like to frame it in a way where people aren't disabled; they actually just have different abilities. For a lot of our members, they have incredible talents. They just need, someone to believe in them and show them the path. And it's not qualified work. It's not personal care. It's not medical support. It's not nursing. It's literally emotional and psychological support to help people, gain independence. Gain independence is the way we describe it. So our model is also, we make it easy to use, it's simple, it's affordable, it's accessible, and it's personalized. So people can find, for example, if we have a young man who really loves basketball, and they live near where Leslie lives, then Leslie could spend an hour or two with him playing basketball every week, and while they're playing basketball, you can teach them skills and have life skills as well. Like I used to, so I had two young men that I was helping with through family, through our business as a social carer as well. And I would take them on a Sunday, both of them to the basketball court, and we play basketball. But the journey to the courts and back, and going to the shops to buy a Gatorade. So during that entire interaction, we're learning about how to take public transport. We're learning how to do budgeting, when we buy the Gatorade, like getting them to hand the cash or pay by card or whatever that is. So it's not just about having fun and playing basketball. You're also through these amazing relationships where people feel like they're also having fun. They're learning heaps and they're learning independence with people that can support them. So that's really what we do. That's the essence of what we do. And it's applicable to all ages. When we started this, we thought we would be solving a problem for people like my parents, maybe older Australians. And turned out when we started, the majority of people that came to us were between 18 and 30 years old. And we didn't expect that. We didn't see that coming, because one thing that a lot of people don't know is there's a lot of psychology reports that have done research around this. We actually got the age group that is the most isolated is and lonely is the 18 to 25 age group. So yeah, we support all kinds of people.
It's amazing, man. And it's, again, it sounds to me like one of those things that, you know, you stepped into, and it's turned into something very different than what you may have thought, right? Like, you started out thinking that it was going to be for people like your parents, and you just told us that the majority of people are young people, right? And it sounds to me kind of like your fitness journey on a weird type of parallel. It's like you started out and then you don't know where it takes you, but it's taking you to this this very interesting place that sounds very fruitful for other people.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. Like when we started, we didn't really know who would be the people using us. So when we launched, we actually, so what happened in sequence of events is December 2015, so this is a year from moving my parents to Australia. My dad eventually passed away in December 2015. We launched the business. We were set to launch the business in January 2016. And then in March 2016, we had a scheduled date to get married. So within like 4 months, my dad passed away. We launched the business and we got married. So we went on our honeymoon and we came back from our honeymoon, and we had a really sort of like basic website at the time. And I logged into the website. It was just me and my wife, right? And I didn't have any technical skills before. So I also had to learn, started learning like basic coding just so we could, have a website. I just logged on, checked the back end, and oh my God, we made $800 while we were on our honeymoon. I go, Jenna, we made $800. Oh my God. And then it was like, all right, like, where did this $800 come from? All right, it came from this person. All right, well, how did they hear about us? All right, let's find out how they heard about us. And how do we get more of that person? And how do we characterize that persona? And then you go in deeper and deeper, and then you just hustle. You hustle until you make it. And then we did so that was 2016. We learned heaps about it. We became an NDIS registered provider, which really helped our growth. We joined an accelerator program called Remarkable, and that's an accelerator program for startups that are specifically focused on this tech in the disability sector. And that gave us a bit of a boost as well. So momentum, it just kind of snowball effect. And here we are today with thousands of members across New South Wales, Victoria. We're expanding to Queensland, and we have a team of 18 people now. Yeah, so it was just me and my wife in our living room, starting a project, and here we are today.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. It really is. And the reason I keep coming back to this about you just putting one foot in front of the other is because, a good friend of mine, someone I consider a mentor, told me a while ago, I was getting caught up in all these things that I was thinking about. He's like, Coops, just play the ball. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, when the ball comes to you, just play the ball. Stop worrying about all the other things that you're trying to think about and control. He's like, just play the ball. And that line really stuck with me, and the concept of it. And it sounds like what you've been doing, right? And when I took on that philosophy to just play the ball, things in front of you, and to play them well, right? Like as best as you can, things just start to develop in a really good way.
Yeah.
You just do, man. And like you said, that momentum builds. And that's why I keep coming back to it, because for people listening to this, right, I think it would be difficult for them to make these connections between all of these different things in your life that you've done to where you are, right? Like you've had this incredible journey, but the common theme that I see keeping coming up, which I want to draw out for people, is you just keep playing the ball. You just keep playing the ball.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing as well is that, Matt, you take this principle that, I'm a big believer and follower of Zen Buddhism, and one of the the big sayings is that they take a beginner's mind, and I feel that you've applied that not only in everything that you do, but on a daily basis. You said that you love learning, and I think that's a very important foundational aspect, to be able to continue to move forward and grow on a moment by moment basis. Even if you see yourself as a student, as a beginner, at every point in time, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, there's this beautiful story of the founder of the martial art Aikido, right? And he was obviously, being the founder, when he was in advanced age and about to pass away, he was obviously the most high level martial artist in that discipline there was at the time. But just before he passed away, he actually requested that his students, put a white belt on him before he died, And what a beautiful, sort of way to just say that, at every moment, regardless of who you are, what stature you hold, what role or, what position you are anywhere, always come in, with a white belt, that metaphorical white belt.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
So that's what I see in you. It's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love that you guys picked that up, and I believe that so much. As soon as you become, and as an employer now, I've seen that, working with a lot of people, if as soon as someone thinks they're the expert or the know-it-all, well, what's next for you? You've literally reached your limits if you think you know everything. And yeah, approaching it every day as a beginner is such a good saying. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, man.
good. It just opens up your curiosity, and if you're curious and discovering new things, you get more ideas, you become more creative, you meet new people, and that opens opportunities.
Totally. I'm a big believer of that myself. So it's it's beautiful to see in you, man. And look, for me personally, it was really nice to speak to you again. But I'm definitely going to sense that a lot of our audience are going to take a whole lot out of this conversation. So yeah, I just want to honor you and say thank you for joining us today, man. And give you the opportunity to share with the audience, more about where they can find out more about like family, or what if there's anything coming up, in the near future for you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Les. So look, people can give us a call, but I guess the main thing is, check out our website. I think all the information is there that you can learn more about our mission and what we're aiming to do. And like in terms of events, we're planning some events this year now that COVID restrictions are reducing. We do have our 5th year anniversary coming up in May and June. But the biggest event we have is we started a national day called Not Alone Day, which is July 26th, and that's happening every year. And actually, the first time we ran that event, we did. So what we did is we had a lot of members of ours who were also part of disability dance groups, and we get feedback from them that they love being part of these dance groups because it gives them purpose, it gives them like a team. They have a team of people they dance with, and some of them have the abilities vary. So it could be from Down syndrome to autism to mild intellectual disabilities, and so we were like, okay. And one of the dance instructors was one of our social carers, and we were talking to her and we're like, hey, why don't we organize something crazy, like something huge? So, as a startup with no money, no budget for marketing, we just like, well, what is something we could do that could make a lot of noise and not cost a lot of money? And so we, luckily we had the red t-shirts that are really good for our brand. And we decided to invite all of our members who were part of these dance groups, as well as our social carers. And we organized a secret flash mob that we did in 2017 in Martin Place, and we did it right in front of Channel 7. And I'm really proud of that moment because it was 8 a.m. on a Thursday. This is pre-COVID, So on a Thursday morning, 2017, 8 a.m., where Martin Place is packed with people walking up and down. And there are a bunch of people with red t-shirts show up as speakers, and we do this awesome flash mob to the song of The Greatest Showman. And you can watch it on YouTube. It's called Not a Long Day. If you type in Not a Long Day, Home Kick Heroes, I think watching that video will, it brings tears to some people. It's an amazing video, and it really showcases what we're all about.
Awesome, man. I'll definitely put all the show, all the details in the show notes so people can find you. And yeah, I might put that link up as well of that video so people can watch it on the website and yeah, refer back to it. And yeah, if anyone wants to, you know, support Matt and you know, the amazing mission that he's you know, representing through Like Family, then yeah, definitely hit him up and say good day and you know, throw your support at him. So yeah, thanks so much again for coming on. Shaun, where can people find you, mate?
Yeah, man, easiest place to find me is just on Instagram. So Shaun_Coop, so SHAUN_COOP. You can also find Les and I at true_north.co on Instagram, or head over to true-north.co. That's our website to find out more about True North, which is our immersive program which we've released, and our first cohort kicks off soon. So if you're interested in learning more about that and the program that we've got going on, just head over there. And how about you, Les? Where can they find you?
Yep, so you can always find me on my website, findingspace.co. If you want to, you know, check out any of the services or products, my mentorship, my meditation programs, anything like this, just jump on there and have a look. I'm also on socials at findingspace.co on Facebook and Instagram as well, so you can find me there as well. I'm pretty responsive on all the platforms, so if you want to send me a message and say good day, I'm on all of those. And if you want to, you know, reach Shaun and I in regards to the podcast, if you want to ask any questions about this episode or any past episodes, if you want to get in touch with Matt, anything at all, our email address is thehustleandflowpodcast@gmail.com.
And Matt, I just want to take a moment to thank you again for joining us, man, and for sharing so much of your story. It's been awesome. It's been, I've really enjoyed meeting you today and learning about your history. You know, Les told me a little bit about you, you know, when he told me that you were going to be coming onto the podcast. And yeah, man, I love what you're doing. I love the mission of what you're doing. You know, I've had elderly grandparents. I'm one of those really fortunate people that has had grandparents that you were talking about, right? And they actually needed care in the later stages of their lives. All of them have. And the care that people like you and the people that you work with show people, it really, really matters, man. It really, really matters. And it has a profound effect on people, not just the people that are receiving that care or really being shown that love with time, right? But it affects the people around them as well, because you're talking about loneliness and, you know, isolation and them being different things. I think there's things that, you know, people go through that they feel lonely about, even though they have other people around them, because they don't understand it. And people that are coming to help them, right? Like the people that are you're helping, there's a different effect, right? And it's really important for them. So yeah, man, I just really want to commend you on what you're doing, and I hope you all the very best into the future, and that you guys just grow and leap and bounds, and that you're able to help more people. So power to you, man. Keep doing you. Keep that energy up, man. I love it. And yeah, if you've made it this far in the episode, guys, just please share this with one other person. That's how we grow the podcast. Love to get your story out, Matt, and have more people looking at Like Family and hopefully helping out as well. So until next time, guys.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. And let me know, Leslie, when you want to play basketball again.